Well, what about a game plan for someone who is late to retirement? Today we're going to take a look. Stay tuned for Prudent Money. Good afternoon. This is Bob Brooks, and you are listening to the Prudent Money Radio Show. Thank you so much for joining me today. You know I do appreciate it. Well, if you got a question for me, please go to the website at www.prudentmoney.com. When you get to the website, go to the top of the page and click through and just ask a question. I'll get you taken care of. It's really that easy. If you need more than what an email can deliver, you're also welcome to go to my calendar, schedule some time, and I'll be happy to visit with you on the phone for a few minutes on what needs to happen to get your question answered. All of those resources are at prudentmoney.com. Well, an interesting article in the Wall Street Journal came out, and I think it describes how a lot of people feel today. And of course, this was interesting about this article. It was written by a journalist, a writer for the Wall Street Journal, and he's basically talking about his concerns with retirement, how he feels like he's real far behind. I think he's 37. And what just interests me about this, and what we've talked about retirement planning, of course, a lot through a couple decades of doing the radio. And I truly believe it is one of the most misunderstood topics when it comes to money, is that people look at it totally different than they should. And a lot of that is the fault of pop culture finance and a lot of the articles they read. For instance, if you don't have $1 million at retirement, you're not going to retire. It's the craziest thing that it has to be a top 5 crazy thing I've seen in writing. It's just not true. So what I'm going to do, I want to read through this, and then I'm going to go through my top 10 tips of making retirement happen when you feel like you're behind. And then I want to get back to the journey of this writer and add a little commentary along the way. So we're going to hopefully do that together in one program. So let's get started. It starts off, he says, "It has taken me years to take saving for retirement seriously, too many years." And by the way, whether you're 37, 47, 57, 67, forget about the age, because really the solutions are all the same. They're just in different forms and different values. So keep that in mind as I read through this. More than a decade ago, while working for a small newspaper in Northeast Ohio, my coworkers and I attended a presentation there. A well-dressed man with a monotone voice went into detail about our employer's new retirement savings plan, the investment options, fees, outlooks, and the outlook and the company match. He used words like financial headwinds and fully vested, and whipped out pie charts to shake things up. Asked me if I had any questions. I said no. I want to stop there and just interject. One of the other problems that I think people have going against them are the presentations. And I know that I've been guilty of this in the past. I mean, it's just kind of comes along with the territory, is that financial advisors tend to overcomplicate things. And it's probably one of the toughest avenues of doing radio, toughest parts of doing radio, is making sure that you are relatable and that what you're saying does translate into some type of understanding. But the pie charts and the big terms like the financial headwinds, and people they get lost in the big words and the fancy charts and the big pictures. And, when you ask if you had any questions, the truthful answer would be, I've got more questions than you'll ever know. I just don't know where to begin. He says that's because at the time, the reason he didn't have questions, the whole thing struck me as off key. Here I was, age 25 and making $25,000 a year, driving an unreliable car and eating instant noodles most nights for dinner. This guy wanted me to envision what my life would be like 40 years into the future while my glasses were being held together by super glue. It is so true. The reality of going out on your own, away from mom and dad, out of college, maybe or out of high school, and now you gotta be a grown up and make things work for you, which is really tough. After the presentation, some older and wiser coworkers did convince me to put enough into the 401k to get the company match, but several months later, I liquidated that anemic retirement account to pay bills. I felt guilty about it. I'm now 37 years old and I'm playing catch up. What do I do? Well, here's the irony of it is that, like I said, I'll say it again. Once you're 37 or you're 47 or 57, the steps that you take to solve this problem in your 30s are the same steps that you take in your 40s. But what pop culture finance makes you believe and gets you so preoccupied on is this whole idea of I'm so very behind. There's no way that I could catch up, especially to get $1 million by retirement or I'm not going to retire. It's all this mass confusion. And I think that it's kind of one of those things where I'm going to hope it all works out. If it doesn't, then it doesn't. But I'm going to hope that it all works out. And hope is not such a great retirement plan. So let's talk a little bit about this. Here's some statistics from the Federal Reserve Board Survey of Consumer Finances. This was done in 2023. Average retirement savings by age: under 35, 20,000; 35 to 44, 45 to 54, 304,000; 55 to 64, 425,000. Now, and then 65 to 74 is around 600,000. From 55 to 64, if you're sitting with $425,000 and consider Social Security, consider a lot of other things, I think that you could easily round out a great retirement starting at 55. At 65 to 74, if you have $600,000 in the bank or in investments, and then in addition to that, you have Social Security or a pension or an annuity income or whatever, I could easily make that work. Pop culture finance will tell you there's absolutely no way. And notice how far away from these numbers are a million. Percentage of adults who think their retirement savings is on track: 18 to 29, 22%. Actually, 28%. That doesn't surprise me. 30 to 44, 31 cents. Here's the one that does concern me. 45 to 59, only 40% say that they're on track. Now, 45 to 59 are it's a crucial age limit that you find yourself in and not ready for retirement. You can do so many good things between 45 and let's say 70 or 60 and 70. 60 plus, not much better, 42%. And so the statistics aren't very good. And once again, I think it comes down to being a huge misunderstanding. So let's talk a little bit about this. By the way, if you just never tuned in, you're listening to Prudent Money. Glad that you were able to join us today. And we're talking about retirement and the misunderstanding of retirement and what pop culture finance tells you. And I'm going to invite you to think differently. So here are 10 tips to getting on the road towards retirement. When I have people come into the office and we're talking about retirement, someone will say to me, I've heard this many, many, many times over 32 years of working with clients, is that I just can't retire. I won't be able to retire. I'm going to work all my life. And then I'll say, based on what? Well, I just know I won't be able to retire. I don't have enough in savings. Well, what are your goals? Well, I don't know. Want to retire like at 65, 66, maybe 64. I just know it's not going to happen. And then you just keep going through this, and what it reveals to you is how very little this individual, and this is most people, know about what it takes to get to your goals. I can't tell you how many times I've had that conversation and have shown people that you are in great shape. You just got to make sure you do A, B, and C, and D, monitor things, have a lot of flexibility when it comes to retirement, and be intentional and prioritize it. But you can't retire based on guessing. You have to retire based on, and I'll go ahead and give this as what I think is a great example. If someone were to ask you, why are you saving money in a 401k plan? Now this takes it up several levels. And you could say, for retirement. Specifically, what for retirement? And that is one of the greatest questions that you've got to be able to answer. What specifically about retirement are you trying to solve and trying to accomplish? I'm going to get back to that in here just a second. I'm up against a break. Stick around, way more to come. This is Bob Brooks. You're listening to the Prudent Money Radio Show. Hi, my name is Bob Brooks, host of the Prudent Money Radio Show. So let me ask you a question. Do you know your numbers? Now, which numbers are those? They are your retirement numbers. That set of numbers is the single most important planning numbers you can know. Yet the majority of Americans don't even know them. Prudent Money Financial Services, sponsor of the Prudent Money Radio Show, specializes in figuring out those numbers and creating a game plan to make sure you're on the right track. Listen to the Prudent Money Radio Show weekdays at 3 p.m. on Bible School Radio 91.3.
Hi, I'm Jill Taylor, inviting you to join me each Saturday morning at 11 o'clock for Choose Life Radio. You'll hear people from across America sharing their stories of faith, forgiveness, redemption, and restoration. Choose Life Radio will encourage you to fully appreciate the gift of life. You may also find help for you or a friend in need. So please join me Saturday mornings at 11 o'clock right here on Bible School Radio 91.3.
Dynamic, practical, life-changing.
There's no point in going to church and not letting the Christ who gave birth to the church on the day of Pentecost change your life.
Join us each day as Pastor Paul Shepherd applies the timeless truth of Scripture to everyday life. It's Destined for Victory on this great station.
Weekday afternoons at 3:30 here on Bible School Radio, KDKR.
Welcome back. This is Bob Brooks, and you are listening to the Prudent Money Radio Show. Thank you so much for joining me today. You know I do appreciate it. We're talking about retirement planning and how misunderstood it is. I'm going through my top 10 tips and to get you back on track, or on track for the first time maybe, and have you look at retirement planning a little bit differently. So the first thing that I talked about, and hopefully we'll get through this. If not, we'll extend all of this into tomorrow. I just never know how long it's going to take me to get through information. So the first thing we talked about is the typical answer that I get is, I can't retire. And as you do a little bit of Q&A with the individual who can't retire, you'll find out that they are just assuming that they can't retire, and they don't really have any concrete numbers to prove them differently, when there's always concrete numbers and they always tell a story. Number 2, see what it would take to retire at your desired age. And this is about building a plan, getting into details, thinking about how many vacations you want to take a year, and just suspend the notion that you feel like you can't retire, and think of it from the standpoint of I'm going to have my best retirement, and it's going to be we're going to get to do all these things. And so what we do is we get the best retirement, and then we see what it would take to hit those numbers. And then if you can hit those numbers, then great, start off on the plan, work the plan, and get you from point A to point B. But if you cannot make the numbers work, then you start maybe dialing back, kind of reconfiguring the plan. Now, one of the things I've noticed with a lot of people is that they're hesitant to do the numbers because they don't want to know. You got to get out of that box. You got to get out of the fear of knowing, where we're kind of comforted by not knowing. It's time to not be clueless. It's time to have a game plan, which is what we're talking about. So remember, I've said this many times, there is a plan for everyone. It may not be the greatest plan that you saw for yourself. It is what it is. Accept where you are and get intentional about where you want to be. If you're 10 years away from what you would call a great retirement goal and you're behind, then do you want that retirement enough that you might sacrifice some extra hours working a part-time job for a certain number of years? Are you willing to prioritize, one value, something that you really value today for retirement because you value retirement so very, very much? But it's all about getting intentional. And what I was talking about, now that I think about it over the break, was that someone asked you, why are you saving in your 401k plan? You say retirement. What specifically are you saving for retirement? Should be the answer. This is where you want to be. I'm saving X amount of dollars and a month, and I am shooting for a growth average, which is how much they grow, of 5 or 6% or whatever it is. And I'm going to do this until age 65. At age 65, I'm going to start drawing Social Security of this amount. I'm going to be able to take this amount out of my investments, and I'm going to have this much in cash, and this is going to last me for the rest of my life as long as I make X percent over time. Now, that to me is the ideal retirement plan, because you're so in touch with it, you know all the details and you know them off the top of your head. And there's some power to that too, because of the focus and the vision for where you feel that not only that where you want to go, most importantly, where God wants you to know. I really believe God has got a big agenda for us in retirement. It's think about it for a second. It's the time of your life where you have no restrictions or very few restrictions on you. You've got the freedom from earning an income. There's so many great things you can do for ministry. So many things you can plug into for volunteering and making a huge difference. And think about the skill set that you had in your working professional life that you can bring down to other charities and nonprofits and churches and really kingdom type work. No time ever will you have this opportunity to be this free. And so, that's the kind of retirement that I believe God wants for us. And that looks different to different people in different situations, but that's what you want to sculpt out into your plan. It's not just all about the numbers, but the numbers facilitate, and they got to be reasonable and conservative. I see more and more people with very aggressive assumptions, and I think that that's a huge risk to assume the market's that you're going to be able to make these huge returns, and everything's going to time out right for you. It's a very, very different situation. They give, number three, the third thing to know is they give, Pop Culture Finance gives advantage to someone who is young. Well, if you're young, you can take all the risk in the world, and you've got all this time ahead of you, and that's all great. Well, yeah, there's some truth to it, but sure, they have plenty of time, but they're also that time, the 30s and the 40s, or the 20s and 30s and 40s, are the most expensive time of your life as well. So there's more competition for your savings dollars versus something else. Whereas if you're in your 50s or late 40s, maybe you're past all that. Maybe you've got kids out of college and off the payroll, and you've paid for the weddings, and maybe in your 50s, you've paid for the weddings, you've done the big expenses. Now this cash flow that's coming in, maybe you just paid off your mortgage. So now you can take this money and you can just pile it in to a monthly savings plan that will get you to your goal. So don't think, and I think that's what a lot of these articles will the point that they make, and I think I don't agree with it, is that if you're behind in your 50s, you're probably too behind. Not true at all. Once again, what I said, that second, get creative. We'll talk a little bit more about this as I go through this, but get creative with how you're going about building your plan. And incidentally, on inflation, don't worry so much about inflation. Let the financial advisor who's going to end up running the plan to get you the numbers, let them worry about inflation and how all that looks. Number 4, how much are you willing to work? If you needed to, would you work from 65 to 70 or 70 to 72? Would you retire at age 70 instead of 64? Are you thinking that far ahead to what you could, 'cause let's face it, maybe you retire from your career-based job at 67, then you do something that you've always wanted to do part-time. You couldn't afford to do it. That brings in, maybe $1,500 a month or whatever it brings in. That can make a huge difference if you did that for 5 years and brought in money to help offset the costs of, offset the Social Security, offset the investments, let the investments work a little bit harder for you. Let's see, where was I? Aggressive investing is more than likely not to get you caught up quicker. I hear this quite a bit, is someone will say, I'm really far behind. I want to be as aggressive as I can be, because it's almost like if I'm aggressive, I'll get caught up because I'll make more money quicker. But what you're forgetting is that the same thing happens on the way down. And over an investor's lifetime, you're going to go through these wild swings where, you make a lot of money, but that you lose a lot of money. It takes a little bit of luck, and it takes willingness to manage those investments. I'll give you a great example of this. Is, let's say that you were aggressive for 20 years and it paid off, and then right when you were about to retire and you think you got the world by the tail, you've made all this money. Say you made the $1 million. Then a bear market hits. The market loses over 18 months, loses 45-50%. You lose half of your money. That aggressive thing didn't work out too well. So you got to be very, very careful of getting caught up into trying to put this into overdrive and speed up make up for the years that you missed. Start where you are and build from where you are, and that will get you what you need. Hey, this is Bob Brooks, and you are listening to the Prudent Money Radio Show. Thank you so much for joining me today. I do appreciate it. What we will do is extend this program into tomorrow. I don't think I've got anybody on the docket tomorrow, so it'll just be you and I. And we'll talk more about how different ways to look at retirement based on what pop culture says that you should do versus what reality says that you can do. And I think that you'll be a lot more hopeful about that question, can I retire? If you have a question for me, please go to the website at prudentmoney.com and send it in, because we are all out of time. Till we do meet again next time, keep the faith and have a great rest of the day.
That's all the time we have for today. Questions or comments for Bob, or to find out more great information like what you've just heard, visit www.prudentmoney.com. Be sure to join Bob Brooks again for the next edition of Prudent Money.